Hi everyone, now I've been making smartphone films for the last 3 years, and I have to say one of the frustrating things about smartphone filmmaking is that it looks very sharp, it looks very hard and quite harsh, and obviously very digital when you look at your films back. However, Dehancer, an app for iOS devices, iPhone XS onwards and iPads, got in contact with me to make a video about their latest app and the updates. Now, Dehancer is an app that will allow you to create an actual film look. This isn't a LUT that you just slap onto your film. It's a very, very specific and very science-based process that recreates the analog film development in an app in your phone. It's absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to show you what it does right here, right now. Okay, so let's go into Dehancer. You'll see immediately on the app that it's for photos and videos. We're going to be focusing on videos, as I say. Now, all these video clips are shot on the Cinema P3 Pro camera, so we select the shot we want to start editing. Now, you've got the original file here, so this is how it was shot straight out of the camera. And then you've got presets. You've got presets, or you can edit. So we're going to go for presets just to show you. These are ones that you can just use straight off the bat without having to edit too much or at all if you don't want to. And this will save you some time, but we're going to go straight into the editing and show you how to build up your shot. So to do that, we're going to go back to the original shot, how it looked, and we're going to click on edit. Now you'll notice there are a few features around the edit screen here. So first thing we're going to look at is the top left, which is your histogram. So if we press on that, we now have a histogram showing us the details in our shadows, midtones and highlights, so we can see if we're clipping and losing information in those areas. If we tap on that again, we then get the RGB histogram. Tap on it again and we're back to the regular histogram for the shadows, midtones and highlights. You've got the loop arrow here, which then plays the video back and forth, back and forth. You've got this arrow here, which allows you to go back to the beginning, to the end of the shot. You can simply press play. Top right, you've got an arrow pointing to the left. That's to undo your last action. And then the right button is to redo your last action. The circular arrow pointing behind, this arrow is actually to go back to the original shot, so you're going to lose all the changes that you made. So you only want to use that if you absolutely have to go right back to the beginning, but you can undo that action by pressing undo. So now we've got our shot imported into the app. We can see we've got presets and edit. With presets, we've got all the presets that have been made by the Dehancer team and other people, creatives as well. They're all mix their looks, so they've got different film stocks, different levels of grain, exposures. Every different film stock will have a different exposure and colouring to them, so keep that in mind as well when you're choosing. Now, there are over 60 different film stocks. There's a number of presets here as well, but we're going to go to original, because we want to make sure that we're working from the original file. So if you go to edit, and we go to source, we can now change elements of the original source clip to correct them. So if we wanted to correct exposure, for example, we can see that's going way overexposed with the red that's coming out of the histogram, and then it goes blue when it starts to go underexposed, losing detail there. And you can see in the histogram how that changes as well when you get clipping in the highlights, and you start to get clipping in the shadows. So this is the color temperature essentially, so you can make it warmer, or you can make it cooler. For this, I think we'll go for a little bit warmer than it is in the actual shot. And in tint comp, you can change the tint of your shot as well, so you can go very extreme. I'd always use just subtle changes. You don't want to make crazy changes unless you're going for something particularly unusual. And then defringe actually works with the chromatic aberrations within your shot. So if we pinch out and zoom in, if we look at the light bulbs here, for example, we can see with defringe, if we move that up, the effect of the orange and redness around that lamp changes. So look at that light in the top left, how that's changing with the defringe. And then defringe radius allows that to be increased in the effect as well. So if you go to 100, you really lose almost all of the chromatic aberrations there, and then you can increase it to bring it back if you want that kind of orangey glow. And that is our source clip if we double tap on it to bring it back into shot. Now if we go to films, we've now got all the film stocks available on Dehancer. So there are about 63 different film stocks here, changing the color tint, changing the shadows, changing the highlights, and they are from Fuji color to film stocks that I haven't actually heard myself. And we've got likes of Kodak as well, and it's scientifically created as well. So essentially what this app does is it's creating the film development process, the analog version of it, where you're practically making and developing film, but putting that into an app. So we'll go with Kodak Portrait 160. This seems a really nice way to go. And now if we go to the top here, we've got push and pull. So we can push the look further, or we can pull that look back. And of course you can press all films if you want to go for certain types of looks. Now with every element that you change, you can actually see the before and afters. So if we tap and hold on the screen, You can see this is how the shot started off before we added the film stock, and this is how it looks after. Before and after, and you can see the change in the histogram as well. And you can press that effect as well on and off by pressing on the actual category. So if you go to films and tap on that, that turns the effect off completely, and that turns it back on. Now, if we go to developer, we can start adding more elements to this shot. So we've got contrast boost, so you can increase the contrast, you can decrease it, and double tap again to set it to the original. I think we'll increase contrast just a little bit. Gamma correction as well, working with the highlights and the shadows too. If you want to achieve more color separation in the image, then you can change that as well. Let's double tap out of that. And again, we can tap on developer or on the screen and hold. This is before we did the developer section, after, before, after. It's really great, so you can see step by step the effect that your change is having. You can color boost as well, which is essentially saturation. So you can see if we really increase that, how saturated it becomes, and decrease that saturation as well, so there's only just a bit of color. The next section is compression. So pressing on compression, this is where we can change the white points and tonal range. So this is really important to keep it looking like a film stock rather than digital. You can see that effect if I double tap on the window. If we change the white point, it just compresses the white points, which is keeping it within a film stock look. You've got tonal range as well, so you can change the tonal range. And you've got the impact of everything you're choosing to affect as well. We've got color density. So that again is not too dissimilar to saturation, but it actually just mainly affects where the strongest colors are. So if we look at this red coat and this yellow coat, you can see that it actually fades just slightly as you move this up and down, and increases slightly as you move up and down. Very subtle. Tap on compression, we can see before, we can see after. The black point, this is something you can control as well, individually, separate to all the other categories. I think that's good. And in the white point, again, you can control that separately. Color mode, I don't really see too many differences in this. You've got normal or luma. We'll keep it normal. And then again, we tap on expand. That's before, and that's after. Before and after. Now we move to print. So with print, this is recreating the physical analog printing of your film. So you can choose which kind of paper you're printing it on. So we've got Kodak Enduro glossy paper, which it's on now. We can go to linear. We can choose Fujifilm 3513 print film, or we can choose Kodak 2383 print film. I'm liking the Kodak 2383, so we'll stick with that. And we can change the exposure of this film look, so we can increase it, decrease it. I think where it is now is good. The tonal contrast, again, this is working with the film stock to make sure it stays within the film look, so you can darken that. And then saturation is saturation, we all know what that does. Decreasing the colors, increasing the colors. You can also affect the color density within the printing process of the strongest colors and the deepest colors. And an analog range limiter, I would always turn this on. Again, this basically limits what you're doing so that when you're making changes, it stays within a film stock look. If you turn this off, you can really stretch it into more digital look and a bit more fake look. So you really want to keep this on so that whatever changes you make, it's really holding that film look across the whole image. That's before printing, that's after. Before, after. So moving to the color heads, you can start changing what would affect the coloring of the printing. So we can make this more warm with the yellow look. We can make it cooler with the blue look. You can add magenta or green if you want to go for that kind of look. Red, cyan. Cyan can be quite a popular look as well within films, so we'll keep a little bit of that. And you can gang, so if you press on that, you'll end up moving all of these features together as one. You can change the shadow tone, so if we go into the shadows, you can see around the light area how it gets warmer and cooler. Mid-tones, you're changing that to make it warmer and cooler as well. And the same in the highlight areas, you can warm up where the lights are, especially at the top of the screen there, you can cool them down. Now preserve exposure, you can bring that down to preserve the exposure, or you can leave it as is, and we'll leave it as is. The impact of everything you're creating, you can take that away or increase it. Tap color head off, that's what it looked like before, and that's what it looks like after. Slightly more cyan and more green effect. As we swipe the toolbar to the left, we're getting into film grain now. Now this is really one of the most exciting parts of this app by a long way. So you can see already the film grain effect has taken place on the image. Let's tap on film grain to see it without. That's without the film grain. That's with. So you can see quite a big difference there, and it starts to look a lot more like old film stock. Now we can choose the negative, which is automatically on, which gives you a more obvious film grain. and you can choose positive to smoothen that grain out and make it slightly less obvious. For now, we're going to go with negative, and you can change the amount of film grain. So you can see in the image here how much that increases at 100%. You can get right down to 0, so you're still getting film grain, but not a huge amount. If we tap twice to zoom in on the image, we can see here the size of the grain increases as well. And you can decrease that to your like, which is really nice. You can customize so many elements of the film grain, it's unbelievable. Now, resolution is a really interesting one. This is essentially going to start altering the sharpness and the softness of your image. We can see if we change the resolution, it just gets sharper like a phone would, and then if you bring that resolution down, it softens it right out. So I think somewhere in the middle maybe is your sweet spot, and obviously a film stock would be a lot softer than a phone's image on a digital camera. You can change that in the shadows as well, the film grain, and same with the midtones. And in the highlights as well, you can increase the grain and decrease it. You can also change the color of the grain, so if we increase that, you'll start to see more greens and reds in the grain. And if we decrease that, you'll start to see regular standard grain. If we just tap on film grain, this is before the film grain and after. Pretty big difference, and it softens out the image a lot. Now, halation is affecting the light sources in your image, particularly light bulbs and specific areas where light is pointing through. Now, if we go to these light bulbs and go to amplify, you can see the halation effect on that light is increasing. So it's almost creating a bit more orange effect around the light. You can change the source limiter. You can change the background gain and the smoothness as well. So this will also smoothen out the halation from the light sources. You've got local diffusion as well, so you can increase the diffusion further away from the light sources to make it more of a dreamy look, and you can pull that back again to make it more standard. We'll add a bit more of a dreamy look. And we've got global diffusion, which takes over more of the image, so you can really push that kind of crazy dreamy look. And you can put it back, so that's a bit more maybe of like a 90s rom-com kind of look. Hue of the halation as well can be changed. So again, if we go into the light source here, hue just changes it slightly. If you look around the black border, you can see that that halation effect is taking place really strongly. And you've got blue comp as well. Make subtle changes to your image around the light sources. And then the impact on the whole image, we can see if we increase that and then decrease that, how it changes. So you can see the look that that's making around the light sources and how it's affecting the light, giving it a bit more of a romantic feel perhaps. So if we go to bloom, so this is essentially like putting a moment Cinebloom diffusion filter on your phone. So if we amplify the effect of the bloom, we can see that really increasing across the whole image and making it very dreamlike. So this is like using a 5, 10 or 20% diffusion filter from moment, and then you can use that in the highlights as well to bloom the highlights, bring that down or increase it as you wish. The source limiter as well, so you can limit how this is affecting everything. Now details is very subtle. I'm not noticing too much difference using this, but that is something you can play with as well. And then diffusion itself, you can see if we increase it to 100%, down to nothing. At this point it's very subtle, but if we go to save lights, you can see how that's making a difference. So in saving lights, if we zoom into the light bulbs here, we increase that, you can see that bloom is not having as much effect on the light bulbs themselves, but if we decrease the save lights, that is really increasing the bloom effect on the lights as you would get with Cinebloom diffusion filters. So I think we're going to just keep on to that, give it a bit of a crazy look, maybe just dim that down a little bit, and then saturation as well. We can decrease around the lights and increase around the lights. So this is before bloom, and this is after bloom. You may prefer before or after. These are all things that you can change. I'm just showing you how you can use these. And then we move to vignette. So in vignette, the best way to look at this is the feathering first. So if you bring the feathering right down, you'll see that there's a circle that just appears if you're very closely looking around that yellow jacket in particular, the circle appearing and not appearing. You can change the aspect ratio of that so it becomes more oval shaped, egg shaped, or you can keep it circular and then go sideways into that shape as well. You can change the size of the vignetting as well, so you can increase it, decrease it. The exposure can be changed as well, so you can change that around whatever you want to create a vignette on. The feathering just smooths that out, so you can have the feathering to 0 or you can create it to 100%.
Now the last two categories of this app are only for the video side of it. So you can use this app Dehancer for photos and video. However, film breath and film weave are only for film.
The film breath effect is an accidental change in exposure, contrast, and colour from frame to frame as the film moves, caused by an uneven emulsion coating or development instability of a camera shutter, and deviations from film breath greatly affect the viewer's experience in terms of feeling analog. Now if we turn on film breath and increase the period, that means the fluctuations in exposure, contrast, and colour from frame to frame actually decrease. So we want the number to be nice and low where it started off at 3, and that will give us a nice amount of image fluctuations in the exposure and contrast, etc. Now you can adjust the exposure of the image at this point as well, so you can increase it or decrease it, play with the tonal contrast as well, the colour, and of course with the impact you can decrease it or increase it. Now if you look at the red barriers on the right hand side, this is where you can see it really takes effect with the exposure fluctuations and contrast, and it just gives a nice touch to that real film look. So gate weave stands for mechanical swinging of a film strip while it is being pulled through a frame window in a film camera, projector, or video coding device. So effectively it's going to add some movement to this shot within the frame. So we want to keep that period number nice and low, that way we're going to get more obvious movements within the camera frame itself. If we increase it, that smoothens that right out so it becomes less and less obvious. If we want to get more of that film look, we're going to have a bit more film movement, and we're going to keep that number nice and low. Now you can also use the transitions of X and Y axis as well, so you can create a bit more movement to the left, to the right, up and down, and then if you press play you can see more of that movement here too. We can also use the rotation tool as well, so we can make the actual frame rotate a little bit side to side. Now you don't want too much of that of course because it starts to look crazy, but a little bit is fine. Now impact, also we can create the impact going down or up of this effect, and then we've got auto zoom, which means if we turn it off we actually zoom out. If you rotate it too much, you'll end up seeing black edges around the frame as it's not fitting into the screenshot. So we want to keep that on, so we zoom in and keep the effect and keep the frame looking tidy. And you can see here with film breath and gate weave together, you get movement in the camera, you get movement and fluctuations in the contrast and the exposure, and you can dial that right down more than this if you want to get more subtle look. So how much is this app? Now, of course, it is a premium filmmaking app. It is right at the top of the professional scale, so it does cost a little bit more than other apps that you normally use or subscribe to. So with this app, you can either use it for $9.99 a month, which I think is a bargain, or you can use it for $79.99 a year. Now for that option, I presume you'd want to be color grading as a profession and doing it regularly. However, for me, someone who films periodically, the $9.99 a month option is absolutely fantastic. You get everything included in that app, and it is only a couple of elements, if that, shy of what the desktop version has, and you get all of it in your iPhone, which is insane. So let me know what you think of this app down in the comments below, and let's have a discussion about it. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.